I have a two-part question.
Okay.
When you were filming in Eugene, Oregon for the Librarians, did you have any Bigfoot sightings? And why isn't a socially conscious guy like you on Twitter?
I'll answer the first part first. No, I didn't see any Bigfoot signs. But funny you should mention Bigfoot. That would be a good plot line for us. We should look at that. I will. Twitter. Social media. I'm just a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to that stuff. I don't have a Facebook page. I just feel like I came so late to the table that I'd be playing catch up.
First of all, huge fan of ER.
Thank you.
Spent many Thursday nights trying to get my kids to sleep so I could enjoy the show. Did you guys ever care to learn the medical jargon, or did you understand some of the stuff? Because it was very realistic. Because somebody with an EMT background, so I know ER jargon. And
we prided ourselves predominantly on being medically accurate. You know, the only dramatic license we tried to take was in the compression of time that it takes to do various procedures, but the actual procedures were done as authentically as possible. And to accomplish that, we had board-certified ER docs on the writing staff and on the set. And all the background trauma nurses that you see in those were all trauma nurses that we borrowed from St. Joe's Hospital in Burbank, who came over and worked background for us. We had technical advisors that would conduct technical rehearsals before we'd even shoot them. Yeah, we thought to ourselves, at the very least, we want doctors to tune in and say, yep, that's what it's like. And so that validation, which came early on, was, you know, sort of the engine that kept us going for a long time. I looked over at Derek when you asked the question.
I'm very excited because I couldn't have planned that.
I know, because in the very beginning, it was like, you know, I made the mistake of saying, it's like learning Latin. So he goes, it is Latin. Oh, and it was intimidating, because when you learn lines, you're usually learning English sentences that somehow one thought follows the next. When it's just gibberish sort of orders and labs, it's very easy to confuse them. And so we were shooting the pilot, and Eric LaSalle had the first, what we called a medical bullet, which is a big, long sort of paragraph where you're describing what's wrong with the patient. And you have to do it quickly, and it's usually as part of a one long, uninterrupted Steadicam shot, so you can't make a mistake. And on this particular day, he made 22 mistakes. And we finally got it on the last magazine of film that we had on set, on the 23rd take. So we teased him mercilessly. We went up, we did 22, 22, 22, 22. The very next episode, I get one that's twice as long. And Eric goes, so I learned this thing so thoroughly that 20 years later, here it goes. Right? 65-year-old male suffered from severe peripheral vascular disease manifested by claudication of the left calf. 10 days post-op for Mercy General after having an aorta bifemoral bypass. Normal post-operative course till about 6 hours ago, and he began to experience the gradual onset of lower left quadrant pain without palliative provoking factors. BP 120/80, pulse 112, respiration 78. Upon auscultation, diminished breath sounds were noted at the base of the patient's right lung. And 3, I tested vocal fragments probate second edition, leading me to a diagnosis of pleural effusion, confirmed by this radiogram, which shows fluid in the patient's right costophrenic sulcus. Thank you. Nice to see you.
I want to know, who's your favorite co-star in the Librarian series?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. There were 3 amazing women: Gabrielle Anwar, Stana Kotick, Sonia Walger. They were all so different. They were all terrific. Sonia was the first, you know, so I'm sort of kind of sentimentally attached there. Gabrielle was more of like we were more sort of adversarial than romantic interest, so she was more like a little sister that you want to give a noogie to all the time. I don't know, I like the third movie. You know, to me, I figured that the third movie is sort of my favorite. So Stana would be the choice, I guess. Although I really do love them all. And I really like Rebecca. I should say Rebecca too. The one I'm currently working with is my favorite.
I'm Lori. Thanks
Hi.
for coming to Pittsburgh.
My pleasure.
I want to know, like, I know I'm starstruck. My daughter promised me not to be creepy.
But like,
So far, so good.
so but being in the business a while, is there anybody that you haven't met that you're?
Oh, tons of people that I haven't met. I mean, I'm not embarrassed to say I really want to meet Tom Walcott today.
He'll be in here at 6.
He'll be in here at 6. I'll tell you a funny story about John Schneider. When years and years ago I was on the set of ER and it was late. It was like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and I was one of the only people on the set. And I see this older woman walking around, and she's sort of looking around, and she didn't look like she worked on the show. So I said, "Hi, how are you?" You know, she said, "Oh, my name is Shirley," and I said, "Hi, Shirley. I love this show." I said, "Well, let me give you a tour." And I walked her around, like I used to do that a lot. And I showed her all the rooms, and suddenly we hear dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. And I said, "That sounds like the horn to the General Lee." And she goes, "It is. That's my son." And we go outside the ER soundstage, and there's the General Lee with John Schneider standing there. And it was his mother who was coming to visit him, but she saw the ER set and wanted to take a tour. So, like 2 weeks later, out of the blue, I get this really nice letter from John Schneider saying, "Thanks for being so nice to my mom." And he sent a little die-cast copy of the General Lee signed by the whole cast of the show, which I still have. And I hadn't seen him since then, until today. He came by the signing booth and said hello. So, and he looks really good, by the way.
Yes, he does, for 55.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Hi, my name's Ellen. My question is, what or who has inspired you to become an actor?
That's a good question. I grew up in LA. I grew up right in the middle of Hollywood. And I was what was termed at the time a latchkey kid, which meant, you know, parents were divorced, my mom worked, so we were on our own most of the afternoon and early evening. And movie theaters were kind of where I spent my time. I lived right off of Hollywood Boulevard, so I'd get out of school and there was a movie theater called the Oriental, where you could see 2 movies for $2. It's not there anymore. It's where the Guitar Center is now on Sunset Boulevard. And that's what I do, and I watched movies pretty much every day when I was a kid. That was my form of escapism, that was my form of entertainment. And then I just got into high school, and on a lark auditioned for the school play, and got a part. And I just took to it. I liked that I was pretty good at it, and I liked that people were complimentary, and I just liked the camaraderie of being part of a cast and putting on a show. And I think it's a combination of those two things, growing up with sort of, you know, watching all my idols on screen and then doing it and really enjoying the interplay between an audience and playing a character. It suited me well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dylan, and I have, if you weren't an actor, what would you have done?
Good question. I don't know, I think I'd like to try, I would maybe like to teach. I would have liked to have been a teacher or a writer. And it's not too late for either one of those things. And I've been thinking about both of them a lot lately. And lately, I mean, I just, this last season on Falling Skies, we had a director fall out, and I found myself volunteering. And so I joined the DGA this year. I directed my first episode of television. And episode 8 of season 5 of Falling Skies, starring 17 Virginia, directed by Noah Wyle. And it was a really great experience. Like, head-turning great. Like, maybe I've only been an actor so I could do this. So I hope to do, I'm going to direct one episode of Librarians, season 2. And I'll see whether or not that's another side of a career that can open itself up to me. What do you want to do when you get older?
Be a veterinarian.
My sister's a veterinarian. It's a lot of school.
Hi, my name's Mason.
Hi, Mason.
Since Falling Skies is gonna end, will you keep your role at the Librarians?
Well, that was sort of part of the whole strategy behind it, is I knew there was sort of one was going off and one was coming on, and I wasn't able to be in every episode of Librarians because I was a regular on this other show, Falling Skies, and they have rules about being a regular on 2 different things. So I was a guest star on Librarians. And we came up with this idea of having the team of librarians sort of carry out the day-to-day missions, and then Flynn would kind of pop in throughout the season, and it seemed to work pretty well last year. I did 4 out of the 10 episodes last year. This year I'm going to do 5 out of the 10 and direct one. So I'll be around most of the season, but in every other one. Good question.
Hi Noah,
Hello.
my name is Shannon, and I just wanted to ask you, for my mom, who has loved you since ER, and I'm obsessed with Falling Skies, like absolutely obsessed. We watch it religiously.
Thank you.
She wants to know if you have a hero complex after ER and after Falling Skies, basically. So,
Does the character make the hero, or does the actor make the hero? That's the question. I like playing characters that have big arcs in front of them. So when I tend to look for things, whether it's a movie or a play or a TV show, I tend to look to see how far is this guy going to travel over the length of the storytelling. And in TV, you kind of really have to use your imagination since you don't know what's going to happen beyond the pilot. But ER was a perfect example because it was John Carter's first day on the job in the pilot episode. So where every other doctor had to start off at a high level of proficiency and professionalism, my guy got to be the one who stumbled and bumbled and dropped trays of urine all over himself and would eventually become a really great doctor. So that arc was huge. Similarly, when you look at a character like Tom Mason, this is a guy who's been an academic all of his life. He's a teacher. He's been a chronicler of history, but never an architect or author of it. This academic guy is going to have to eventually become a military-style leader of not just a small group, but potentially, the nation. That's a big arc, and that learning curve was really kind of fun to play. Does that answer your question? Probably not. What did you ask specifically? Sometimes go off on a tangent.
hero complex.
Hero
Would
complex.
you like to have one now?
Well, with both of those guys, they were flawed heroes, and that was part of those arcs, is to make sure that it wasn't just sort of Dudley Do-Right. The guy shows up, and because he's got a winning smile, you should trust him. John Carter had a lot of peaks and valleys in his education, and so did Tom Mason. He flirted with ego and hubris and all the other things that become pitfalls to power. But ultimately, I think I'm cast because I sort of radiate a sense of positivity for the most part. So the characters I play tend to have happy endings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Hi, I'm
Hello.
Sierra. I'm a huge...
Sierra with the EKG nails. You can't see this, but she
Yes.
has actual EKG.
Yeah. I did them myself. I'm a nail tech as well as a teacher. So I'm a huge ER fanatic, and I refuse to watch the last episode because I don't want to admit that it's over.
It's a good one.
I know, but I don't want to watch it because then I'll have to admit it's over.
I understand.
Yeah. But my question is, I know back, you said the pilot episode was done 20 years ago, but the fast camera movement and the way it's filmed was kind of new to that time. How hard was it to film those fast scenes and stuff like that?
Very tricky in the beginning because when we shot the pilot episode in a real hospital called Linda Vista Hospital, it's in East LA, it kind of lost its funding and went empty in the mid-'80s, and a lot of shows shoot there because it's a big empty old hospital. And then when we got picked up to become a series, they built a replica set on the Warner Brothers lot, Stage 11, that looked tile for tile exactly like that set, with the exception that they elongated it, so they put a lot of glass into it, which is very rare on a film set because you're always worried about reflections. You don't want to see a camera, you don't want to see microphones. But they all beveled so that you could stage them in such a way. But by having all that glass, you could have a depth of field that was much deeper than you normally see on a TV set. So you could have patients being treated 5 rooms back, 4 rooms back, 2 gurneys going through, and you could also potentially start characters on the way back of it and walk them through this big, long set uninterrupted. And with the advent of the Steadicam, this camera that could be worn by one operator without needing to be tethered to a bunch of other people, we suddenly had this freedom of movement to do those kind of shots. And now they're pretty standard. You see these walk-and-talks everywhere. But we were one of the first shows to employ them, and it was, it gives you a real sense of energy and a sense of pace. But it also gives great texture because you've got all these great foreground, background crosses. You feel a real sense of vitality in there. That gives it a real authentic feel. But they are tricky to do. The nice thing about the ER cast is a lot of us have theater background training, and those big long takes are just like doing a big long scene. So as long as you were comfortable memorizing up to 10 or 11 pages of dialogue and were pretty fast on your feet, we got to the point where a 7 or 8 page scene, which could easily be almost 2 days work on some shows, we could knock off in 2 or 3 hours. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.